Don't factor using these fractions. What you simply want to do is get rid of the fractions. To do that, what you want to do is find the least common denominator. Find the smallest number that 6, 3, and 2 all evenly divide into. Now that number is going to be a 6. So if I want to get rid of these fractions, I could simply multiply by 6. But what we want to do is we want to factor this, right? So if I'm going to multiply by 6, though, I also want to go ahead and multiply by a 1 over 6. Because wouldn't you agree, if you multiply by 6 and then multiply by 1 over 6, you're still going to have this original expression. That's going to allow us to factor this quadratic and actually get the correct values. Now, what we're going to do, though, is just going to multiply one at a time. So I'm going to multiply the 6 first. What that's going to do is get rid of the fractions. Then that's going to allow factoring to be much easier when I'm dealing with integers. Then at the end, I'll multiply in the factored form by 1 over 6. So when I multiply by 6, this is now what I'm going to get. OK, so and that's still multiplied by 1 over 6. Don't want to forget about that. All right, now this is much easier to be able to work with, right? Now we have a trinomial, and we have a 4 in the front, which is not ideal. But I mean, our only two options here are going to be a 4 and 1 and a 2 and 2. And then therefore, we have -3, which, you know, what two numbers multiply to give you -3? It's either -3 and +1 or -1 and +3. So there's not a lot of options. A lot of times, the more practice we get with factoring, the more we can do this in our head. But let's just go ahead and write it out. Let's get an option and kind of see what would make sense. So I am going to work with here. Let's do a 4x as my two binomials and an x, right? So 4x times x is going to give me a 4x squared. Now let's kind of think about what numbers for 3 that would work. Well, we already talked about that, but where should I put the 3? Well, I don't want to put the 3 over here because 4 times 3 is going to give me a 12, right? So what I'm doing is basically doing my multiplication out loud. So let's go ahead and put a +1 there, or a -1. Well, our middle term is going to be negative, so I probably want that to be a -1. And then that means this would have to be a +3. So let's see if this kind of works out. 4x times x is 4x squared, good. And 3 times -1 is -3. And then these two is going to be a 3x. These two is going to be a -4x. -4x plus a 3x is going to be a -x. Perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. But again, remember, these two do not multiply to give us this. That's why it's so important when you multiply by 6 to get rid of your fractions. To have everything still preserved, you've got to multiply it also by a 1 over 6. So now what I simply can do is I can distribute my 1 over 6 to only one of them, though. That's kind of like the little caveat here. Here you can see this is a trinomial separated by multiplication and division. So I apply distributive property to every single term. But over here, we have it in factored form. So I cannot apply distributive property. I can only multiply by 6 by one of these factors. Now, it doesn't matter which one you do, because the cumulative property works for multiplication. So what we're going to do, though, is I'm just going to multiply it to the first one. And when I do that, I get a 4 over 6, which is going to be a 2/3. And then a 1 over 6 times 3 is going to be a +1/2 times a x minus 1. Now, what you recognize is that is going to be the factored form. We can do a quick little check. 2/3 x times x is going to be 2/3 x squared. 1/2 times -1 is going to be -1/2. And maybe if you just want to check my math, let's go ahead and do 1/2 x. That'd be 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. And then plus a -2/3 x, right? Because 2/3 x times -1 is going to be a minus a 2/3 x. So now let's just get common denominators. That'd be a 3 over 3 and then a 2 over 2. Therefore, that's going to be a 3 over 6x minus a 4 over 6x. And a, let's see, 3 over 6 minus 4 over 6 is going to be a -1 over 6x, which exactly is our answer.